Well, it's very unfortunate that Donald Trump and Republicans have decided to shut the government down because they're unwilling to provide health care to working class Americans.
As it stands, people who don't get insurance coverage through work, Medicare, or Medicaid will see their tax credits expire at the end of this year. According to the health policy organization KFF, insurance premiums for those customers, they would rise by more than 100%.
The tax credits expire at the end of the year, and when they do, the cost of health insurance for more than 20 million Americans are expected to go up.
Hey, welcome back to the channel. Something big is happening in America's healthcare system, and almost no one saw it coming. Behind the headlines about protecting American industry, a quiet storm is brewing inside your own medicine cabinet. Insurance premiums are set to jump nearly 9% in 2026, according to Aon's latest projections, with some ACA plans climbing as high as 15%. That means medical costs could soon eat up a quarter of the average household's income, twice as much as they did just 2 decades ago. But here's the twist. It's not just insurance. Washington has now imposed a 100% tariff on branded drugs imported from Canada, effective October 1st, 2025. Hospitals say operating costs are already spiking by 15% or more, and patients are starting to feel it in every refill, every bill, every visit. For a country that promised to make healthcare more affordable, something feels off. Did the plan to protect America's health industry just end up hurting American families instead? If you've made it this far, you probably care. Consider subscribing to stay updated. But that first shock, the one hitting patients at the pharmacy counter, didn't come out of nowhere. It was designed. In Washington, the move was sold as a clever way to push Big Pharma to lower prices. In reality, it's turning into a dangerous experiment with global consequences. President Trump announced a 100% tariff on branded drugs imported from Canada, calling it a special leverage to force pharmaceutical giants into price negotiations. On paper, it sounded bold, even patriotic, but in practice, it started a ripple effect no one seems able to control. Companies like Pfizer and AstraZeneca quickly struck so-called voluntary deals to sidestep the tariff, agreeing to domestic price caps in exchange for exemptions. The catch? Only firms building new facilities inside the U.S. qualify, turning what could have been an economic reform into a political contest for loyalty. Meanwhile, cross-border supply chains are seizing up. Logistics costs are soaring. The price of key pharmaceutical ingredients has spiked. What was meant to build self-sufficiency has instead revealed how fragile that goal really is. The dream of a made-in-America medicine industry now looks more like a multi-billion-dollar gamble, and once again, it's patients who pay the price. If you've made it this far, you probably care. Consider subscribing to stay updated. And while Washington framed the tariff as a fight against Big Pharma, it's Canada, not the pharmaceutical giants, that's been caught in the crossfire. As America's second-largest healthcare partner, Canada suddenly finds nearly $7 billion worth of exported medicine under direct tariff pressure. What began as a pricing strategy has become a regional supply crisis. Canada's pharmaceutical exports to the U.S. total about $6.75 billion, with nearly $3 billion coming from finished drugs that appear on the new tariff list. According to trade data, 411 medical products, roughly 1.9% of all drugs sold in the U.S., originate in Canada. Of those, 79% are generics and 21% are branded medicines, many of which form the backbone of North American hospital inventories. The dependency runs deeper than many realize. At least 52 drugs rely on Canadian supply chains for more than half of their total U.S. availability, and 28 have no substitute source anywhere else. Early projections suggest tariffs between 25% and 100% could add $750 million annually to U.S. healthcare costs, just from Canadian imports alone. From pharmaceutical plants in Toronto and Montreal to distribution hubs in Michigan and New York, every link of the cross-border health network is now being forced to rethink what Made in North America really means, and whether the concept itself can survive a trade war over medicine. The irony is hard to ignore. A policy built to protect Americans is now forcing them to pay more just to stay healthy. What began as a tariff aimed at billion-dollar pharmaceutical firms has quietly crept into every hospital bill and insurance statement across the country. Generic cancer treatments that once cost $40,000 per cycle are now projected to rise by an additional $10,000 over a 24-week treatment period. Hospitals, already struggling with labor shortages and higher utility costs, say the new drug tariffs are pushing operational expenses up by at least 15%, according to the American Hospital Association. Even the Federal Reserve has acknowledged the fallout. Jerome Powell admitted that tariffs have become a major driver of inflation in 2025, effectively erasing months of progress in stabilizing consumer prices. For ordinary Americans, the math is brutal. Insurance premiums climb by hundreds of dollars each month, coverage lists shrink, and out-of-pocket costs balloon, all while wages fail to keep pace. A policy meant to challenge Big Pharma has turned into a nationwide healthcare tax, one paid not by corporations, but by the very people it was supposed to protect. While the U.S. struggles to contain its healthcare costs, Canada is quietly holding its ground. Ottawa has chosen a path of stability over reaction, relying on long-standing regulatory systems and a measured approach to shield its citizens from the shockwaves shaking global medicine prices. At the center of that system is the Patented Medicine Prices Review Board, PMPRB, a federal agency that continues to cap drug prices, ensuring Canadians remain protected from international volatility. It's not a perfect system, but it has proven remarkably resilient under pressure. Across the industry, around 35,000 Canadians work in pharmaceutical manufacturing, and most of those jobs remain insulated from U.S. tariff turmoil. Despite threats from multinational companies to scale back operations, many have instead opted to restructure within Canada, keeping production close to home while adjusting export priorities. Meanwhile, biotech investment is quietly accelerating. Research institutes and venture funds are channeling new capital into biopharmaceutical innovation, betting that Canada's predictable policies can attract long-term global partnerships. As America wrestles with price shocks and public frustration, Canada's slow, steady approach has become more than just a defensive strategy. It's a symbol of confidence and credibility in a region increasingly defined by economic uncertainty. What's hurting the U.S. might just be helping its northern neighbor. As America wrestles with rising costs and regulatory chaos, Canada is quietly emerging as a safe harbor, the one place in North America where stability still sells. Pharmaceutical and insurance giants are already redirecting production investments toward Canada, seeking refuge from political risk and tariff uncertainty. Cities like Toronto and Montreal are rapidly positioning themselves as the new alternatives to Boston, particularly in next-generation biotech and pharmaceutical research. Ottawa has seized the moment. A $2 billion investment package aimed at strengthening domestic pharmaceutical capacity and medical technology is being rolled out, signaling that Canada intends not just to endure the regional shakeup, but to capitalize on it. By leveraging what officials call an economy of confidence, Canada is quietly drawing foreign direct investment away from the U.S., much like Japan and Germany did in the post-pandemic recovery. The balance of power in North America's pharmaceutical supply chain is shifting. And while no one is calling it a victory yet, the map of global medicine may soon have a new center of gravity, one defined less by size and more by stability. What began as a trade policy has evolved into something far more personal, a crisis that touches lives, not just markets. The U.S. drug tariff war has spilled across borders, turning what was once an economic debate into a question of global ethics. How far should nations go to protect themselves before they start hurting everyone else? The wave of price increases is already spreading. Europe and Asia, both major suppliers of intermediate drugs and active pharmaceutical ingredients, APIs, to the U.S., are now bracing for secondary cost surges. Global supply chains that once operated in sync are fragmenting under the weight of new trade walls, giving rise to what some analysts are calling a geopolitical medicine divide. International bodies like the WHO and WTO have issued warnings about potential shortages of critical drugs, from insulin to cancer treatments, if the current escalation continues. In this fragile system, even small policy shifts in Washington can ripple across continents, affecting hospitals, patients, and entire public health systems. For now, Canada's stability stands out, not as a shield from chaos, but as a potential anchor for the Western pharmaceutical network. If Ottawa can maintain trust, transparency, and balanced trade, it might quietly become the new stabilizing force in global medicine. But the question remains, Can a nation of 40 million truly shoulder that responsibility, or will it too be drawn into the next political storm? In the end, this isn't just about tariffs or trade deals. It's about how much a society is willing to risk in the name of control. When politics and healthcare collide, ordinary people are the first to feel the consequences. So what do you think? Is Canada ready to become North America's reliable pharmacy? Or is it only a matter of time before the cycle repeats? If this video gave you something to think about, like and subscribe to support more content like this. Thank you.